Now we need to build the workflow for the expense approval process. For this, we go back to the App Studio and select the Transactions menu item. We then select the list we want to work with, in this case, expenses. This then sets up a visual workspace for you to easily create your workflow process. The Visual Mode tab will give you a canvas to easily create your process using the three components: stage, role, and branch. Our process is going to have 3 stages, so we will drag and drop those onto our canvas first. The first stage is for the team members to submit expenses. Then the project managers will approve them. And then the finance department will process the approved expenses. Now we will link the stages together from submission to approvals to processing. We need to tell our workflow how to know an expense is approved. We do this by setting a condition for status equal to approved, and then update the label. However, if the PM rejects the expense report, we can add another branch and condition. Where the condition for status is rejected, then follow this new branch back to the submitter. Once the logic is in place, we can focus now on the people. By clicking on the people icon, we see the group Me, which is a default group in SharePoint meaning everybody. When the user comes in, they will be presented with a form based on the list data. The user may have different forms to view, create new, or edit existing forms. So we're going to create a new form by editing a new form. Let's give the form a name, New Expenses. We can now specify which column is enabled, locked, and which ones are hidden. We are going to hide status since it will default to new. We will lock the approved by, who will be the person approving the expense report. And we will hide the remarks since there won't be any as this is a new form. Let's lock the date approved, and then let's move the project variable up. Now we can save, and the new expense submission form is done. Now the next step is the approval stage and form. We want to make sure that everyone can't approve their own submissions, so let's edit the edit form. We'll now call this the approval form. We can now update the form conditions so that the project manager is the only person that can approve the form. That is, the person that was listed in the last form under the Approved By field. So that needs to be equal to the current user. At this point, we don't want the project manager to change what the person has submitted, so we will go ahead and lock those fields on this form. The only thing changeable will be the status and the remarks. We can move the project up the item list and lock it as well. Let's change the date approved to locked and make it the system date. There is an option for rejecting the expense report as well. The form the users use to work on a rejected expense report is very similar to the submission form. So we're going to choose the Edit Form and then import the submission form settings. Let's give this a name of Resubmit. The only difference with this form is that we want to show the status and remarks section so the user knows why it was rejected. Upon resubmission of the expense report, we need to define an action. So let's create a new action group that will change the status from rejected to new. Here we see that the value of the current item assigns the value of status to new again. Here at the approval stage, we're going to remove the ability for them to edit the expense report. We now need some validation so that we can determine who is the project manager so we know who can approve the expense report. Here in the global settings, we are going to do a lookup for the project manager of the project and apply it to a column. We are going to select the source column on the right as Project Manager and add it to the destination column on the left called Approved By. Whenever a user selects a project when creating a new expense report, it will now automatically copy the data to the Approved By column that we marked as read-only or locked. Let's save and look at our solution. We can now select New Expense and add a title to the form we created. In this case, we're going to buy a very inexpensive Ferrari. We'll then select a project, where we will then see our lookup bringing in the project manager, the name who will do the approval of this expense. We can now click OK. On the approval side, we can see the expenses that I need to approve, we'll then select Approve, add my remarks, and then send it on its way.